ChatGPT said, "They always say the day your life changes forever doesn't come with a warning. No flashing signs, no thunder from the sky, just a knock, a name, a lie." It was a Thursday morning in Jackson, Mississippi, sun just cracking through the blinds, coffee brewing slow. Malcolm Ford laced up his steel toes like he did every other day. 39 years old, grease under his fingernails, good hands, honest hands. The kind of man who never raised his voice unless the Saints were losing. His daughter, Zora, was 7, had a gap-toothed smile and pigtails that bounced when she ran. She was finishing her cereal when he bent down, kissed her on the forehead, and whispered, "Be good for Mama, all right." He grabbed his lunchbox, winked at his wife, and stepped out the front door. He never saw his house again. You're listening to Injustice Browning. I'm Mark Joie. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you care about truth, justice, and the stories that get buried, subscribe and stay with us. And if this story moves you, comment, speak his name, say what they tried to silence. It was 8:40 a.m. when the silent alarm went off at the Jefferson Quick Mart, a small corner store 6 blocks away from Malcolm's shop. The clerk said a man came in, pulled a gun, and emptied the till. 20 seconds, no mask, no prints. The man ran out the back, disappeared into the morning haze. By the time police arrived, all they had was panic in a single trembling voice. A white woman outside, pacing, crying, said she saw someone run past her. Black man, tall, hoodie. He looked mean. That's all she said, but to the wrong ears. That was enough. Malcolm's shop was 2 blocks away. He was under the hood of a Toyota, oil dripping slow, when they pulled up for squad cars. Guns drawn, hands where we can see him, confused. He stepped back, hands raised. No one read him his rights. No one explained. They threw him against the car, patted him down, and cuffed him like he was already guilty. Back at the house, his wife was folding laundry. She didn't hear the phone ring, she felt it. That knot in the gut, deep and sudden. By the time she got to the station, Malcolm was in holding, shirt ripped, lip bleeding, confused as hell. The detective didn't want answers. He wanted confirmation. Where were you at 8:40? At work. Can anyone prove that? My boss, my co-workers, the whole damn street. The detective wrote something in his pad. Didn't nod, didn't speak, just closed the folder and left the room. That night, the news ran the story. Arrest made an armed robbery. They showed a mugshot. Malcolm Ford, not the Malcolm that coached his daughter's soccer team, not the one who helped Miss Dodd fix her fence, not the one who always carried jumper cables in his trunk just in case. No, they showed the face of a suspect, a criminal, a number. His daughter didn't understand. She just wanted to know if Daddy was coming home. His wife told her soon, but her eyes told another story. The store had cameras, but the footage was grainy. You could see a shape, a man running, but you couldn't see a face. No prints, no weapon found, no money recovered. But that one witnessed the scared woman. They clung to her words like gospel. That's him. I know it was, even though she never looked at him twice. Even though fear had painted a stranger in her memory, Malcolm sat in that cell, knees to his chest, staring at the wall. Time slowed down. The world outside kept spinning. But for him, everything stopped. He couldn't call his daughter, couldn't touch his wife, couldn't fix what he didn't break. He kept thinking, what did I do wrong? Was it the hoodie, the skin, being born in the wrong part of town? That night, he didn't sleep. He just sat there, listening to the buzz of the flickering light, to the coughs of other men in other cells, to the silence that followed every moment of truth stolen by lies. They called it a case. He called it a trap. We call it what it is, injustice. And that was just the beginning. ChatGPT said, there's something cold about a courtroom, not the temperature, the feeling, like the walls are watching, like the truth never made it past security. Malcolm sat there, stiff in a borrowed suit to sizes too small, next to a man who barely looked up from his folder. His public defender, overworked, underpaid, introduced himself 3 days before the trial and called Malcolm Marcus. Twice during jury selection, the courtroom smelled like wood polish and fear. You could feel it in Malcolm's palms, sweating, through folded hands. His wife sat in the second row, holding their daughter so tight the child could barely breathe. His mother clutched a Bible, whispering prayers too old for this kind of pain. And across the aisle, the people who wanted to bury him. The prosecutor didn't come to prove anything. He came to perform. Sharp suit, confident voice, smirk behind every sentence. He told the jury Malcolm Ford was dangerous, that he fit the profile, that he had a look in his eyes. Never mind that he had no record, no motive, no connection to the scene. What mattered was that Malcolm looked like the man they feared. And the jury, all white, 12 people. Who wouldn't ride Malcolm's bus, wouldn't stop in his neighborhood, wouldn't shake his hand in a grocery line? But now, they were allowed to decide his life. None of them asked a single question. The defense called to co-workers who said Malcolm was under the hood of a Camry when the robbery happened, said he had grease on his knuckles and music in the background. The prosecutor called them unreliable, said they were covering for a friend. They weren't liars, they just weren't believed. The witness, that white woman, cried on the stand, said she felt scared, that he just looked like the kind of man who could do that. She never pointed a finger in the store. She never picked him from a lineup. But up there, under oath, she said, "I'm almost sure it was him." Almost. Sure. Almost was enough. Malcolm wanted to scream, but he stayed quiet. Because when you're a black man in a courtroom, even breathing wrong can look like a threat. The trial lasted 2 days. No weapon, no prints, no surveillance that showed his face. But the jury didn't need evidence. They had fear, and fear is loud. When the verdict came back guilty on all counts, the room fell silent. His wife gasped. His mother collapsed. His daughter cried out for her daddy, and no one moved. Not the judge, not the bailiff, not the ones who put him there. The judge read out the sentence like it was just math. 22 years. No parole, no room for mercy, just a number on a page. Malcolm's knees buckled. His lawyer touched his shoulder once, then looked away. The prosecutor shook hands with the detective. Someone in the back clapped. They led him away in shackles, chains around his wrists and ankles like history repeating itself. He didn't look back, because if he did, he might have shattered. That night, in the prison intake room, they shaved his head, took his clothes, gave him a number. One more black body in a system built to forget him. The guard told him to strip. Malcolm hesitated. The guard said, "You think you're different, huh?" Malcolm didn't answer. He thought about his daughter, about how old she'd be when he got out, about how long 22 years really was. Birthdays missed, school plays, first heartbreaks. He wouldn't be there, and she'd grow up thinking justice was just a word they used to shut people up. He sat on the thin mattress that night, the door clanking shut behind him like a final punctuation mark. And in that silence, he cried, not because he was weak, but because he'd done everything right. Worked hard, paid taxes, raised his kid with love, stayed out of trouble. And still, it wasn't enough, because sometimes in this country, all it takes to be guilty is to be seen. ChatGPT said, prison don't care who you were before they put you in it, to them. Malcolm Ford wasn't a father, or a mechanic, or a wrongfully convicted man. He was inmate to 147,196, another blackface in a long line of them, another body to count, another number to forget. The first night, they threw him in with 3 other men, steel bunk, concrete floor, toilet with no lid. One of them tested him within an hour, stepped into his space, looked him up and down, said, "You soft?" Malcolm didn't answer. He just stared back, long enough to be left alone, long enough to make it through that night. But that was just night one. The guards, some didn't bother hiding their hate. One of them, a white man with a crooked badge and eyes like ice, used to whisper the word boy every time he walked by. Boy, eyes front. Boy, on your feet. Boy, don't speak unless I tell you to. Malcolm said nothing, not out loud, but inside. He was screaming. The food was barely edible. The beds broke his back, and the time was the worst. Slow, heavy, like a fog that never lifted. Days melted into each other. Weeks crawled. Birthdays passed. Christmas came and went, unwrapped and forgotten. Outside, the world kept turning. Inside, he was stuck in a place that wanted to swallow him whole. But Malcolm made a choice. If they were going to steal his freedom, they weren't going to steal his mind. He started in the library, dusty shelves, torn covers. He read law books, dictionaries, court transcripts. He didn't even understand half of it at first, but he kept going every night, every chance, until the words started making sense. Habeas corpus, due process, misconduct, suppression. Words that could set a man free if you learn how to fight with them. He wrote letters to innocence projects, civil rights groups, newspapers, law firms, hundreds. Typed out on yellow paper with a broken pen. Most never replied. Some sent him rejection slips. A few sent prayers. He kept writing anyway. He started helping other inmates, showed them how to read, helped them draft motions. Helped one man shave 2 years off his sentence just by catching a mistake in the paperwork. That man cried and hugged him. Malcolm didn't cry back, but when he went to sleep that night, something felt different in his chest. Purpose. His daughter, Zora, started visiting once a month. Through glass. She grew up on the other side of that divider. One visit, she held up a spelling test with a gold star. Another time, she showed him her braces. He missed her first steps, her first word, her first everything, but she never stopped calling him daddy. He lived for those visits, lived for the sound of her voice. Even if it came through a crackling phone. Sometimes, he broke, quietly, when lights went out, when another man got stabbed over a candy bar, when he saw a new inmate walking with the same confused, broken look he had years ago. But then one day, a black guard older, gray at the temples, leaned in during a routine search and said, "Low and careful. They don't expect you to make it. Don't prove them right." Malcolm never forgot that dot. He repeated it like a prayer when the lights went out at 10, when his back ached and his fingers cramped from writing, when he wanted to stop hoping, when the system made him feel invisible. He kept going. 7 years in, he filed his own motion for post-conviction relief. It was denied. He appealed. Denied again. He didn't stop. He found new evidence, found discrepancies, found things his public defender never bothered to look for. He kept digging like a man who knew the truth couldn't stay buried forever. He started a journal, called it Pages They Won't Read. In it, he wrote everything about being a father from behind glass, about the smell of a cell block in July, about the sound of hope when it's the only thing left echoing inside your ribs. Malcolm's body aged faster than it should have. His knees cracked when he stood. His hair turned gray at the temples too. But his mind, his spirit, they burned brighter than ever. They thought the walls would break him, but all they did was sharpen his fire. Jack said, 14 years, that's 5,001 nights. Malcolm stopped counting around year 7, not because he forgot, but because remembering hurt too much. He had learned to move through time, without hope, just purpose, one motion at a time, one page at a time, one breath at a time, and then someone new picked up his file. Kendra Lewis wasn't supposed to be looking for Malcolm Ford. She was an associate at a small law clinic in Atlanta, fresh out of Howard Law, barely 3 years in, the kind of liar who still believed in what the book said about justice. She was cataloging old cases, looking for anything the big firms missed, just names on files. But something about Malcolm's case made her stop. Something didn't sit right. No fingerprints, no DNA, no physical evidence, a single eyewitness statement, vague, emotional, shaky. She read the transcript 3 times. I'm almost sure it was him. Almost. That word again. Almost was enough to steal a man's life. Kendra kept reading. Buried deep in the prosecutor's original folder was something odd. A document, lightly marked. A statement from another customer in the store that day. A man, black, said he saw the real suspect running out the back, said he knew Malcolm Ford personally, and it wasn't him. The statement was dated, signed, but never submitted at trial. She stared at it, heart pounding. They buried this. She found a name at the bottom, Tyrone Ellis, last known address in Jackson. She tracked him down. He was still there, still working, 2 jobs, still haunted by the day he watched someone else take the fall. I told the cops what I saw, he said. They told me I must have been mistaken. Kendra filed a motion to re-examine the evidence. She requested DNA testing on the cashier's counter, the back door, the register handle. None of it had ever been tested. Why? The state fought back hard, claimed the case was closed, that justice had been served, claimed she didn't have standing. That 14 years was too long to open old wounds. But Kendra didn't stop. She filed again, then again. Her name started to echo around the courthouse. The system started to sweat. In the prison, Malcolm got a letter from her. He stared at the envelope like it was glowing. "My name is Kendra Lewis. I believe you've been wronged." He read the words over and over, afraid they might disappear if he blinked. He hadn't let himself hope in years. But something stirred. They started talking. Through letters, phone, calls, video chats. When the system allowed, she asked him for names, dates, memories. He gave her everything, every broken detail, every locked away pain. He couldn't believe anyone was listening. Months passed. Then one morning, a guard opened his cell and told him to get dressed. Malcolm's heart jumped into his throat. They took him to a video hearing. No warning, no prep. And there she was, Kendra, on screen, standing before a judge, her voice calm, steady, unshaken. She laid it all out. The buried witness, the DNA, never tested, the misconduct, the silence. The judge sat quiet. Then he spoke. "I'm granting a motion to reopen this case. Mr. Ford, you will be transferred to county for reevaluation." Malcolm didn't move, didn't speak, couldn't breathe. 14 years of silence, and someone finally said his name with respect. That night, he didn't sleep, not because of fear, but because of what might finally be possible. His daughter was 21 now, studying pre-law. She'd sent him a picture in her cap and gown the year before. He kept it folded inside his Bible. His wife had never remarried, said no man could replace him, said she'd been married and sold this whole time. The years were gone. He couldn't get them back, but maybe, just maybe, he could get the truth. In the back of the courtroom, during that hearing, an old juror had shown up. One of the 12. He didn't say a word, just sat there listening. Maybe he came to see what they missed, or maybe, finally, to feel the weight of what they helped do. The walls didn't crack overnight, but when they did, you could hear it. ChatGPT said, "Courtroom to see was colder this time," but Malcolm didn't shiver. He sat straight, eyes forward, chin up. 14 years of chains will do that to a man. Either you break or you harden. The retrial began on a rainy Tuesday morning. Cameras swarmed the courthouse steps. People holding signs. Some said justice for Malcolm. Others said it's about time. But inside, it wasn't about signs. It was about truth. Kendra stood tall, at the front, no paper shuffling, no nervous glances. She knew this case better than she knew her own reflection. The prosecution tried to hold their ground, but their foundation had cracks. Big ones. The buried witness, the untested DNA, the disappearing documents. Every thread they pulled made the whole thing unravel. Then came the video. The real suspect, a man serving time in Louisiana for a different armed robbery, sat in an orange jumpsuit, face hollow, voice low. He looked into the camera and said, "I robbed that store in Jackson, alone. I never saw Malcolm Ford in my life." He didn't smile, didn't cry. He just told the truth. The court fell quiet. Next came the white witness, the woman whose words had locked the cage. She sat on the stand, hands shaking, different now, older, softer around the eyes. She said, "I wasn't sure. I said I was, but I wasn't. I was scared. The officer told me I must have seen him. I wanted to believe them. I wanted to feel safe again." Malcolm didn't blink. He just stared, not with hate, but with the kind of silence that says, "You took something from me you can't ever give back." Then came the DNA expert. Finally, the results had been run. None of it matched Malcolm. Not the fingerprints, not the hair, not the sweat from the back door handle. It was all someone else. It had always been someone else. When the judge leaned forward, took off his glasses, and said, "Mr. Malcolm Ford, this court finds you not guilty of all charges." Malcolm didn't cheer. He just closed his eyes and breathed, not deeply, not fully, just enough. Kendra reached over, touched his shoulder. He whispered, "Thank you," but it didn't feel like enough. How do you thank someone for handing you pieces of your life? Outside, the world had changed. There were smartphones now, self-driving cars, music he'd never heard, faces he didn't recognize. He stepped out into it slowly, wearing a suit donated by a local church and shoes that pinched. His wife stood at the bottom of the courthouse steps. She hadn't cried in court, but now the tears came fast. She held his face in her hands and said, "You're home." Zora was beside her, taller than he remembered. Her eyes were his. She looked at him like she wanted to run into his arms, but didn't know if she should. He opened his hands wide. She flew into him. They stayed locked like that for a long time. Then came the reporters. Do you feel vindicated? What would you say to the people who convicted you? Do you plan to sue the state? He didn't answer. Not then. Not yet. Later, the state cut him a check, 7 figures, called it a settlement, as if that could settle anything. He used some of it to buy a house for his mama, put money aside for Zora's future, gave to legal defense funds, set up a foundation in his name to fight wrongful convictions. But at night, when the noise faded, when the house went still, he'd sit on the back porch and stare at the sky. He'd count stars like he used to count days. They said he was free, and on paper, he was. But no one ever gave him those birthdays back. No one rewound the clock to put him in the crowd at Zora's first recital. No one erased the scars on his soul from the nights he begged to God he wasn't sure was listening. He was free, yes, but not whole, and maybe that was the price. Chag said Malcolm never wanted fame. He never asked for microphones or headlines. But after everything, silence wasn't an option. He started small community centers, school gyms, church basements, no suit, no script, just his voice. Rough from years of shouting into the dark, finally being heard in the light. He'd stand before rooms full of young men, some wide-eyed, some half-broken, and say, "They almost erased me, but almost ain't all the way," and you could hear the room still, like everyone forgot to breathe. He told them the truth, not the TV version. He spoke about cold cells and broken promises, about how it feels to watch the world move without you, about the rage that simmers when you know you're right, but no one listens. But he didn't stop there. He told them about the fire that made him study the law, the fire that made him write, even when no one wrote back, the fire that helped other men read their own indictments for the first time in their lives, the fire that said, "You're not done yet." He started traveling, speaking on panels, meeting with lawmakers, sitting in rooms that once shut the door on people like him. He told them, "I'm not here for pity, I'm here for change." And everywhere he went, Zora was watching. She'd sit in the back of those meetings, notebook in her lap, eyes sharp like her mother's, heart loud like her father's. When she finished law school, Malcolm cried harder than he did the day he got out. She didn't just become a lawyer. She became a defense attorney, and every time she walked into a courtroom, she carried her father's name like a banner. She didn't fight just for clients. She fought for every child who grew up talking to their parent through glass. They work together now, father and daughter. Pain made them partners. Love made them unbreakable. Sometimes at night, they'd sit on that same porch and just be. Malcolm would sip his tea. Zora would lean her head on his shoulder. They didn't speak much during those moments. They didn't have to. But when they did, Malcolm would say something soft, like, "They tried to make me hate." And Zora would say, "But you didn't." And he'd nod, slow and steady, "No, because hate don't fix what's broken, but purpose might." He didn't live for revenge. He lived for legacy, for the men still inside, for the mothers still praying, for the names still waiting to be cleared. He knew the system didn't fail by accident. It was built like that, built to confuse, to intimidate, to grind people down until they don't fight back. But he fought back, and now he taught others how to fight too. Every story he told ended the same way, with a quiet warning. It could have been your father, your brother, your son. It could have been you, and it still could be, if we let it. The fire still burns, and Malcolm Ford carries the match.